Before fire there was stone. Endless gray stretched across the world, sky and earth, silent and unmoving. The dragons ruled then, immortal and cold, their scales unbroken, their hearts untouched by time. They knew no death, no birth, no change. They were perfect, and in that perfection they were empty. But among them was one who did not belong. His name was Seath. Born pale and soft, without the scales that shielded his kin, he was fragile, a creature of breath in a world of stone. He watched the others from the shadows of their wings, listened to their wordless silence, and felt the cold of it pierce his heart. They were eternal, and he was not. They were complete, and he was hollow. While the others looked outward and saw only eternity, Seath looked inward and saw the question. Why must perfection stand still? Why must eternity be without meaning? He envied what he did not understand. He desired what he could never have. And from that longing, his mind began to bloom, beautiful, curious, and cursed. When the first fire rose, and the sky split with thunder, the dragons looked upon it with disdain. But Seath watched. He saw in that light something the others could not see, the promise of change. And in that moment, he knew he would betray them. For Seath, the Scaleless was not born evil. He was born unfinished. When the first flame was born, the world broke its silence. Light and shadow divided the gray, and from that spark rose gods, each bearing a fragment of its power. Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, looked upon the dragons and saw in them the old world, immortal, stagnant, eternal. He gathered his lightning, and with the strength of his kin, waged war against the stone. But the dragons could not be killed. Their scales turned aside every blow. Their hearts did not know fear. The fire of the gods could scorch the sky, but it could not pierce eternity. Then came the whisper of the Pale One, Seath the Scaleless. He approached Gwyn, not with sword or thunder, but with knowledge. He spoke of the dragon's secret, of the strength they carried in their scales, and of how that strength could be broken. Gwyn listened, and for the first time the gods and a dragon stood as allies. Lightning fell like rain, stone gave way to flame. The sky turned white, and the dragons began to die. Seath watched their wings burn, their bodies crumble, their immortality unravel like ash in the wind. He felt no triumph, only trembling awe. The gods rewarded him. Gwyn named him kin, granted him a kingdom, and called him wise above all. But in the quiet after the war, Seath looked upon his pale reflection and felt the old envy return. He had destroyed eternity, yet remained outside it. He had helped end the age of dragons, but not his own suffering. The fire had given him power, but not peace. And for one such as Seath, power without peace is the beginning of madness. Seath built his kingdom in marble and glass, a labyrinth of crystal that shone like frozen flame. Within its halls, he gathered scholars, sorcerers, and dreamers. all who hungered to touch the edge of the divine. He spoke to them of knowledge, of truth beyond gods and death. He told them that wisdom was not given, but taken, that the soul must be broken open to reveal what lies within. The Duke's archives became a cathedral of thought, a shrine to the mind itself. Tomes upon tomes lined its walls, filled with symbols too perfect to be read, and words too heavy to be spoken aloud. And at its center, Seath worked without rest. His scales were gone, his flesh pale as snow, his eyes blind from staring too long into the light. He sought the one thing he had destroyed, immortality. He studied the flame, its cycles of death and rebirth. He dissected souls, believing each one a key to eternity. He captured maidens for their purity, sorcerers for their minds, dragons for their blood. But each experiment brought only failure. His body withered, his veins filled with crystal, his thoughts circling like dying stars. He believed that the secret was close, that if he could bind the essence of life within a vessel of crystal, he would never die. And in that belief he found comfort. A comfort that soon became worship. His followers called him Seath, the great scholar, the pale father of sorcery. They saw his decay as transcendence, his blindness as sight beyond sight. But Seath no longer saw truth. He saw only reflection, 1,000 mirrors staring back at a hollow god. And beneath the brilliance of his own creation, the first cracks of madness began to form. There is a moment when brilliance turns upon itself. When the pursuit of truth becomes hunger, and hunger becomes despair. For Seath, that moment never ended. He had touched too much, seen too far into the light, and now the light consumed him from within. His experiments grew cruel. What once was study became ritual. What once was curiosity became need. He began to twist the living, to shape them into fragments of his dream. Maidens were turned to crystal statues, their souls frozen mid-breath. Sorcerers lost their minds, their thoughts fracturing like shattered glass. And when they begged for release, he called it progress. In the heart of his archives, he built a chamber of mirrors and light. There he placed his greatest secret, a crystal heart, pulsing with the rhythm of false eternity. It was his refuge, his proof, his lie. He believed that through the crystal he could separate soul from death. That within its purity lay the answer to all decay. But the crystal does not heal, preserves, traps the moment before dying, and calls it life. Seath did not notice when the echoes began to answer him, when whispers filled the halls that no longer held breath. He spoke to reflections and thought them scholars. He gazed into the crystal and saw eternity, his own face multiplied into madness. He had sought immortality and found only repetition. He had searched for knowledge and uncovered only mirrors. The dragon who had betrayed his kin was now betrayed by his own mind. And as the years became centuries, the difference between life and death, between light and reflection, ceased to matter. The archives became a tomb, palace of glass, where light no longer warmed, only blinded. The scholars who once filled its halls had become shapes without thought, wandering through corridors of endless reflection. Their eyes glimmered with pale blue light, their voices long since gone. At the center of it all, Seath waited. The sound of crystal pulsed around him like a heartbeat, steady, eternal, hollow. He no longer slept. He no longer dreamed. He merely endured. The crystal that had promised eternity had turned against him. Its purity seeped into his flesh, spreading through his veins, turning his body into the very thing he worshipped. He became half flesh, half crystal, a being neither alive nor dead. Those who entered his chamber found not a dragon, but a monument to obsession. He was vast and terrible, a pale shape coiled around a heart of light. His wings hung tattered, his eyes burned with madness and sorrow. The followers who remained called him divine. They offered their bodies to his experiments, believing that through pain they might share his eternity. But Seath no longer recognized devotion. He saw in them only subjects, reflections, mirrors of his own failure. When the gods he once served turned away, he raged. He tore through his own halls, crushing crystal and scholar alike. He screamed for the truth he had lost, for the peace he had never known. And as his body bled light, he realized the horror of what he had become, a creature trapped forever in the moment of his betrayal. Neither mortal nor divine, neither dragon nor god. He had achieved what he sought, an eternity without end. But eternity, without peace, is only madness unending. In the end, Seath achieved eternity. But it was not the kind he sought. His body could no longer die, and his soul could no longer live. He had torn himself away from the natural order, from the rhythm of birth, death, and renewal, and found nothing beyond it. No truth, no peace. His heart, now a crystal of blinding light, beat endlessly within the labyrinth he had built. It pulsed with false life, trapping him in a circle of reflection, forever alive, forever alone. He had become what he once envied, a being that could not die. But unlike the dragons of old, his immortality was not born of strength, but of fear. The fear of fading, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of silence. His mind fractured under the weight of centuries. What had begun as thought became instinct. What had begun as study became ritual. He could no longer remember why he searched, only that he must never stop. And so he moved, blind and vast, through his empty halls, his claws dragging over crystal floors, his breath echoing like wind through broken glass. The scholars he had made lingered still, their souls tethered to his madness. They worshipped him as a god, even as their bodies turned to shards beneath his gaze. Above the world, the fire flickered and dimmed. But below, in the quiet of his prison, Seath's light did not fade. For it was not life that burned within him, but the refusal to die. A creature who had betrayed all things, his kin, his gods, his mind, and in the end, himself. Knowledge was the flame Seath could not stop chasing. He believed it would free him. He believed it would make him whole. But the truth he found was not revelation. It was reflection. For all that he uncovered, he learned nothing of peace. Every secret answered only with another question. Every discovery revealed only another wound. He had betrayed his kin to escape mortality, only to become its prisoner. He had traded the stillness of the dragons for the madness of thought, a storm with no end, no rest, no meaning. And so the archives stand, long after the gods have vanished, long after even the flames have dimmed. The crystal still glows faintly in the dark, each surface holding his reflection, each whisper echoing his name. To those who wander there, he is still the great scholar, the pale father, the immortal mind that touched eternity. But what they find in the end is not wisdom, only sorrow made visible. For knowledge without soul is emptiness given form. Light without warmth, life without end. Seath sought to understand existence and became its warning. He is the proof that truth, when taken too far, turns upon its seeker. And now, deep in the glass chambers of his own making, he remains, a whisper within crystal, a shadow of brilliance that no longer knows it shines. He will never fade, and he will never live. His eternity is silence, shattered only by the faint hum of his own creation. The dragon who envied perfection found only reflection. And in that reflection, the world sees itself, its hunger, its pride, its endless reaching for a light it was never meant to hold. And so the fire dimmed once more,